So the Iliad is the foundation of Greek civilization, which is the greatest civilization in human history, the most creative. It gave us Plato, Thucydides, Herodotus, Aeschylus, Euripides, Sophocles. Greek civilization is essentially the foundation for Western civilization. So the question we will look at today is, how is it possible that one epic poem can give birth to a civilization? Okay? So, the thing to understand about Greek civilization is that there are two important concepts. The first is arete. Sorry. Arete. The second is eudaimonia. So arete means virtue, excellence, or character. It's something that makes you special, what you excel at. Okay? And traditionally, there are two types of arete. There's war fighting, and there is speech making. In Greek civilization, the paragon of the warrior is, of course, Achilles. And the paragon of the great orator, the great speaker, is Odysseus. So we are reading the Iliad right now, and then after we finish the Iliad, we will read the Odyssey. Okay? So these are the two great characters in Greek civilization. Achilles, the great warrior, and Odysseus, the great orator. Okay? Eudaimonia means flourishing. And the idea of eudaimonia is that you can only be happy, you can only be yourself when you are achieving your arete, when you are expressing your arete. So for example, Achilles, in the Iliad he tells us that before he came to Troy, he was given a prophecy. He could either die old at home or die young, but a hero on the shores of Troy. And he said, well, duh, of course I'm going to die young in Troy, because only by fighting, only by winning glory can I achieve eudaimonia. Okay? And that's why he's so unhappy when he gets in a fight with Agamemnon and he has to sit out the war. And he thinks of different ways of getting back into the battle. Because without fighting, he can't be Achilles. He is the paragon of the warrior. Okay, so that's the idea of eudaimonia. I can only be happy when I am being my creative best, when I'm achieving my true potential. Okay? Now, for the Greeks, war fighting and speech making are really the same thing, but through different means. Okay, so when you fight a war, what you're trying to do is you're trying to impose your reality onto the world and make others believe what you believe, right? You do that through force. By brute strength, you show that you're superior, and therefore others must obey you. But speech making is actually trying to achieve the same thing, okay, but through words. Okay, so rather than through force, through beauty and through truth, you're trying to create a new reality that others submit to. And the example, of course, is the speeches between Odysseus and Achilles. Okay? Odysseus and Achilles. Alright, so remember the context. Achilles gets in a fight with Agamemnon, he refuses to fight, and the Trojans, led by Hector, are destroying the Greeks. So Agamemnon and Odysseus and the others, Nestor, have a war council, and they agree that they'll go and beg Achilles to come back. Okay? And Odysseus and Nestor and others, they go to Achilles and they present an argument to Achilles. And Odysseus gives a very long speech. Now the question for us is, why are the speeches in the Iliad so goddamn long, right? Because Odysseus can simply say, hey Achilles, we'll give you $1 million. Will you fight for us, please? He can also say, hey Achilles, we're losing the war. Stop being an asshole. Come fight for us, okay? He can make it very, very short. Why is it so long, right? And then Achilles, his response can be like, no. Okay, but he also offers a very long speech. And the answer is, they're not trying to respond to each other. They're trying to create their own reality, okay? So with his speech, what you're really trying to do is you're trying to project a movie onto the world. You're trying to create a new reality that others must inhabit. Okay? That's why speech making is like war fighting. You're trying to create your own reality and impose it on others. Right? So remember what Odysseus is doing. He knows that Achilles, for him, it's really about face, right? He's lost face in front of the others, and that's why he won't back down. That's why he insists on Agamemnon apologizing. Okay? But Odysseus also knows that Agamemnon himself won't apologize. So for Odysseus, because he is the great orator, that is his arete, what he's going to try to create a new reality that Achilles inhabits, and which will convince him to join Odysseus in the war, okay? So how does he do that? What he does is he expands the imagination of Achilles. All right, that's why the speech is so long, because he's trying to create a new emotional reality for Achilles. Right now, Achilles is selfish, right? So what does Odysseus say to Achilles? The first thing he says is, Achilles, I want you to imagine this. Before us is a great feast. We can see this feast. Now I want you to imagine what's the opposite of this feast. A great desert where we're all dying, we're all starving. And that's the war we're fighting right now against the Trojans. That's why we need you back. Okay, so it's a powerful image. And then he uses imagery to take Achilles to the present, where Hector is this giant, this god, running around killing all Greeks before him. Okay? And then he takes Achilles back to the past and say, remember your father, Peleus. Before you came to the war, you promised him that you would win glory for him. You promised that you would win glory for the Greeks. Okay? Then he takes Achilles to the future, which is, let's imagine what happens when we win this war. When we win this war, all the riches of Troy, all the treasures will belong to you, Achilles. Agamemnon will give you his daughter for a bride, and you will be the glory of all of Greece. You have treasures and treasures. Think about the present. Think about the present. Think about the past. Think about the future. Okay? Expand your mind, Achilles. Right? That's what Odysseus is doing. He's trying to expand Achilles' imagination. And once you enter this world that Odysseus has created, then you will be convinced to join him. Okay? So that's what speech making is. Speech making is projecting a movie onto the world that everyone can observe and then absorb this new reality. Okay? Internalize this new reality. Right? And Achilles knows this. And Achilles refuses to be beaten. Right? So Achilles, for his speech, counters Odysseus with his own reality, which is a very self-absorbed reality, okay? Right? So rather than expanding outwards like Odysseus wants, Achilles continues to expand, to contract inwards, right? He uses the word I a lot, right? Me. Odysseus never uses I or we. He's always like we, okay? So Achilles says, hey, I understand that Hector to you is a god, but when I saw him, he ran away from me. Right? Oh, Peleus, my dad, I should go home to see him, so goodbye, guys. And like, Agamemnon's daughter for my wife, I spit on her. I don't want any of this crap. Okay? So it's like, so he contracts inwards. Okay? So, and that's why the speech is so long. Because in speech making, it's a war of realities. It's a war of narratives. And you create narratives through speeches. Okay? But not only that, but there's certain techniques to speeches, because the goal of speeches is not just to paint a reality, but you want to paint a reality in which it is internalized by the others, and therefore you must make it memorable. Okay? So remember, in the beginning of class, I had you do an assignment, which is write down the speech, right? And even though you didn't force yourself to memorize it, you're able to memorize a lot. Okay? And that shows you the power of the speech. The question in it is, what makes the speech so powerful? And the answer is because it's poetry, guys. Okay? Poetry. And the elements of poetry, of course, are imagery. And this is what Odysseus does well. This is what he specializes in, okay? Drawing pictures for you to see. Okay? Metaphors, connections, okay? Metaphors is what we call connections. And connections are things that help you clarify reality, okay? And which shows you things that you couldn't see before. So for example, if I say the sky is like the sea, that doesn't really surprise you, okay? If I say the sky is like a snail, well, that surprises you. And because it surprises you, you remember it, okay? And because you remember it, it reorders the way you see reality. All right? You also have diction, choice of words, syntax. Okay? And these are things that both Odysseus and Achilles specialize in, especially Odysseus. Okay? Does that make sense? All right? So they're trying to create these narratives through their speeches, and they have these techniques. And guess what? The Greeks, their education system was very simple. All they had to do was memorize the Iliad. Okay? Because when you memorize the Iliad, you learn how to make a great speech. Right? And you understood that for me to make a great speech, I need to have impact. I need people to remember what I say. I need to imprint myself on others. All right? And this system becomes the very basis of Greek civilization. Right? Speech making. Where to get everything done, you have to go in front of people and make a speech and create a reality for people to accept. All right? And this is what leads to democracy. Okay? Are we clear? Okay. Now I want to talk about how, in fact, Homer creates civilization. Okay? All right. So, Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant was a German philosopher, and he's primarily concerned with how we understand reality. Why do we see the things that we do? Why do we think the thoughts that we have? And he wrote a very good book called The Critique of Pure Reason, in which he outlines this theory, okay? So and what he tells us is this. Traditionally, we've understood ourselves as passive observers of reality. Okay, this thing is before us, we stand before it and we try to understand it. Okay? What Kant teaches us is that no, we are in fact active participants in reality, and we shape and form the reality before us. Okay? So, Kant divides the world into two. The first world is the world of objective reality, the things in themselves, or the noumena. Okay? And what's the noumena? They're just vibrations. Okay, we talked about this, right? The entire world is sound, vibrations, frequencies. So we can actually see these things. So what we do is we filter the world around us and turn it into things that we can understand, called the phenomena, which are the things to us, okay? Things to us, or the things that seem to us. All right, and we do so through a filter called time and space. So time and space do not exist outside of us. They exist inside of us in order for us to understand reality. Okay? So time, what does time mean? Time just means sequence. Right? Sequence is just like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If we put things in sequence, we create time. Space is the idea of sensation. Okay, sensation is just basically the 5 senses, right? Alright? Now, time and space do not exist outside of us because everything outside of us is just pure energy, okay? But our minds can't perceive pure energy, therefore we use time and space, sequence and sensation to understand the world around us, to order the world around us. Okay? Alright. So, but what this means is that if we're able to control time and space, we can control reality onto itself. Okay, does that make sense? And what is this thing that controls time and space? This thing is called language. Okay? Before, we would just each perceive our own time and space. With language, okay, we're now able to come to a collective understanding of reality. Right? And who creates language? Poets create language. And therefore, poets, through their poetry, create reality onto itself. That's what Odysseus is trying to do. He's trying to, for his poetry, create a new reality for everyone to live in. A reality in which people get along. A reality in which people, like Achilles, are able to forget their hatred against Agamemnon and fight for the common good. Okay? Alright? So, even though each of us has our own understanding of reality, a poet is able to create a language that is so beautiful that it comes into us, and we internalize the language, we absorb the language, and we together create a new reality with the language as the building blocks. Okay? Does that make sense, guys? Alright. Alright, so let me explain now how Homer is able to do this. Okay? Let's talk about how Homer is able to do this. Homer. How is a poet able to create reality? Okay, so a poet is unique in the world. Poets are really prophets, okay? So if you look at all these great religious figures of the past, including Jesus, including Zarathustra, they weren't religious figures. They were really poets, okay? And how they're able to work is they have a divine connection to the universe. Okay, what we call okay. So there are different names for the universe. Okay, so Hegel, the German philosopher, used the term Geist. Geist. Okay? What is Geist? Well, Geist, it's hard to translate because it's German, okay? But think of it as 3 English words. And in fact, actually, Geist will give us 3 English words. These 3 English words are ghost, gist, and geyser, okay? Geyser is an eruption, okay? Ghost is the underlying thing. And the gist, the essence, okay? And that's what the Geist is. The Geist is all around us. It's like the ghost. It's always changing. It's always becoming. It's always erupting like a geyser. And it's really the essence of things, the gist, okay? All right? Carl Jung had the word he uses, a collective unconscious. The collective unconscious. Plato will use the realm of the forms and ideals. Okay? Christians will say heaven, whatever, okay? All right? But these are the universe, all right? And remember how we said before, our memories are stored in the universe. The universe is almost like a divine psychic internet, right? So every single memory is stored inside the universe. And what poets do is they're able to access this universe. And as a result, they're able to summon the memories of the universe. And when they do that, they create epics of poetry, okay? All right, the Iliad. Now, as I keep on discussing, when we read the Iliad, each character is a real person, okay? Each character has a living past, present, and future. By reading the speech of Patroclus, you understand his memories. You understand where he came from, what he wants, and where he's going. Okay? So everyone in the Iliad is a living, breathing character. And how is Homer able to do that? He's able to do that because he's able to summon these people from the universe, okay? Even though you're dead, your consciousness is still alive in the universe. Even though Homer is no longer with us, his consciousness is still within the universe. So it's possible through intense meditation to actually connect with Homer, Dante, Shakespeare, whoever, okay? They're all there. And that's what Homer is doing. He's able to connect with these people and bring them into the Iliad, okay? But because these people are living, the Iliad itself is a living memory, okay? And what I mean by that is, okay, the purpose of the Iliad is to create a memory, a living memory for people to observe. Okay? So remember, Homer, he is a bard. At this time, people don't read and write. So what he's doing is, he's doing what Odysseus is doing, which is he's going from town to town. People are surrounding him. There's 100 people. And then for the entire evening, he recites his poetry. And he's doing what Odysseus is doing. He's painting a movie for everyone to observe together. And it's the same thing when you go to a movie theater where, yes, it's the same movie, but everyone's experience is going to be different. Okay? And how it becomes different is that you implant your own consciousness, your own understanding into the Iliad. So it becomes a shared creation. And when you do that, what happens is that, and this is really important, guys, you connect directly to the universe. Okay? So in other words, the Iliad was created because of inspiration from the universe, but it's also a portal into the universe itself. And this is what allows for new creations, okay? Okay? So as you are observing the Iliad, because your own experience is different, because your own connection to the universe is unique, by interpreting the Iliad, you create a new universe onto itself. Okay? And this is what we call, together, a process we call civilization. All right? This is what happened. This is why one poem, the Iliad, was able to give birth to an entire civilization. Because it was so alive, so powerful, so connected to the universe itself, to the monad, that when you observed it, you created into yourself a portal into the monad, the universe, the heavens, that allow you to create your own universe that then connected back to the monad. Okay? So it's just one dialogue. Right? Any questions? Are you guys clear about this? All right? And think about this. All right? This is what the Greeks did. And how do we know it's true? Because even today, the Iliad speaks to us. Right? The Iliad, when we read it, we can identify with Odysseus. We can understand Achilles. We can relate Achilles to ourselves. We can predict how Achilles will behave. Okay? And that's proof that this Iliad is eternal and immortal because it connects us to the monad. But not only that, and this is most important, is that you may not know this, but the more you read the Iliad, the more it's opening your mind. Okay? Your mind is an antenna, okay? Your mind is an antenna to the universe, right? So when you read the Iliad, it's as though your download speed is now increasing. You have a faster connection, strong connection now to the internet. And so they're able to absorb more. Okay? When you're able to absorb more, you're able to create new realities in which you're able to observe, in which you're able to analyze deeper. All right? And that's why we read the great books. Because it is literally, it allows us to connect and talk to God itself. Okay? Does that make sense, guys? All right. So, yeah. Any questions before I move on? All right. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to read together. Sorry. We're not going to read together an essay by Percy Shelley. It's called The Defense of Poetry. And he explains how this happens, okay? All right, so now that I've given you the theory, we'll see how Percy Shelley was a very famous British romantic poet, how he explains this, okay? Okay, sorry. All right, so this is from his essay, The Defense of Poetry, okay? And it's a very long essay, but I'll just highlight for you certain aspects. Okay, so he's talking about how Homer created Greek civilization. And Homer was a bard poet, but it had a heavy influence on the playwrights. Okay, the three big playwrights, of course, are Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides. And the theater will become the very essence of Athenian life. Okay, so what you did for fun was you would go to a theater. But the theater was more than just entertainment. It was about education. It was about enlightenment, edification. Okay, so he talks about the theater in Athens. Okay, the drama at Athens, or who, wheresoever else it may have approached to its perfection, ever coexists with the moral, intellectual greatness of the age. All right? So the theater at Athens provoked these tremendous feelings in people that made them into moral people with ambition, with creativity. All right? The tragedies of the Athenian poets are as mirrors in which a spectator beholds himself under a thin disguise of circumstance, stripped of all but that ideal perfection energy which everyone feels to be the internal type of all that he loves, admires, and would become. All right? Okay. So again, the idea of poetry, the idea of truth is that it's a mirror in which you can look at yourself and you can look at the world around you. Achilles, Odysseus are in you and you are in them. And by observing them objectively, you can better understand yourself. The imagination is enlarged by sympathy with pains and passions so mighty that they extend in their conception the capacity of that by which they are conceived. The good affections are strengthened by pity, indignation, terror, and sorrow, and the exact calm is prolonged from the satiety of this high exercise of them into the tumult of familiar life. Okay? So the idea of Greek tragedy is epiphany and catharsis. So if you look at Greek tragedy, there's a very common pattern, okay? So there's a tragic character and he's undone by hubris. Okay, that's a great tragic flaw, his hubris. He's arrogant. Achilles has hubris. He thinks he's better than everyone else. Every man has hubris. He's better than everyone else, okay? Patroclus will die because of hubris. Hector will die because of hubris. So it's hubris that is the great killer of people, okay? No matter how great you are, you will suffer from hubris. The greater you are, the more you will suffer from hubris, which can only lead to tragedy. And you're observing this, and you recognize that, oh, it's hubris that leads to tragedy, and therefore, it will make you a much more humble person, okay? This is what we call epiphany. But regardless of your epiphany, you're still going to face tragedy, okay? The person is still going to fall. So, Hector, no matter how great he is, he's still going to die. Patroclus, no matter how innocent he is, he's still going to die, okay? And this will lead, and so what happens is you feel a connection with that person, you cry, and this leads to catharsis, okay? Catharsis is basically purge. Whatever feelings that you have, you cry, you purge your feelings, you purge your hubris, you purge your hatred, okay? And this will make you a whole person. But when you commit catharsis, what happens is that you now connect with the character itself. So the character now lives in you, and you live in the character. Okay? And that will make you a much better person. Does it make sense, guys? All right. Even crime is disarmed of habits, horror, and all its contagion by being represented as a fatal consequence of the unfathomable agency of nature. Error is thus divested of its willfulness. Men can no longer cherish in it as a creation of their choice. In a drama of the highest order, there is little food for censure or hatred. It teaches rather than self-knowledge and self-respect. Neither the eye nor the mind can see itself unless reflected upon that which it resembles. The drama, so long as it continues to express poetry, is as a prismatic and many-sided mirror which collects the brightness rays of human nature and divides and reproduces them from the simplicity of these elementary forms and touches them with majesty and beauty and multiplies all that it reflects and endows it with the power of propagating its like wherever it may fall. Okay? So this is very long, but it's a very simple idea. The idea is that when you watch a tragedy, okay, when you observe a tragedy, you're observing a fundamental truth about human nature, okay, which is that we're all going to be tragic. That classic case is Oedipus, okay? Oedipus is a man who killed his father and married his mother. And when he discovers the truth, he blinds himself, and then he goes into exile, okay? And if you actually read the tragedy by Sophocles, he did nothing wrong. It was just fate. It was just an accident. But unfortunately, that's what life is about, okay? So you are a great person when you're able to acknowledge your limitations, you're able to acknowledge fate and destiny, but you struggle regardless. Okay? That's what arete, that's what eudaimonia is. To recognize your limitations, to recognize the universe may have a grudge against you, but you struggle on regardless. Okay? And that story, when you watch it yourself, it brings sorrow to you, it brings pity, but it makes you also much more wise and reflective about the world that we live in. Okay? And that creates wisdom, that creates empathy, that creates morality. And that's why Greek drama is so important. Okay, now let's look at another passage. Poets are not only subject to the experiences or spirits of the most refined organization, but they can color all that they combine with the evidence and hues of this ethereal world. Okay, all right, this is a really important idea. Remember how we said that poets have a connection to the divine, right? So they are absorbing the geist. They are absorbing the monad, okay? But at the same time, they're absorbing the world around us. The material, okay? They're observing human nature. They're observing nature, like life itself. And what they do is they combine these two together, okay? The present with the eternal. The here with the forever. And they turn it into words that are able to express both the material and the spiritual. The here and the forever, the present and the eternal, okay? A word, a trait, and a representation of a scene or a passion will touch the enchanted chord. Okay? Diction or metaphor. enchanted cord. Enchanted cord is just your connection to the divine, okay? So this word, because it's so beautiful, this sentence, because it's so beautiful, will reawaken your memory, okay? That's a really important idea where we are always in a process of reincarnation. All right? So why are we here in this world? Because there are things that we can experience that we cannot experience in the spiritual. When we're in the spiritual, we are formless. We don't have any bodies. Therefore, we cannot have sex, we can't have pain, we can't love. Okay? But in this world, we can. But what's important to understand is that when we reincarnate into this world, our memories of our former selves and of the spiritual world are lost to us. Otherwise, we can't actually live the life that we live, okay? But poetry, because it connects both to the divine and to the present, certain words will spark your soul. And your soul is the forever memory of all your lives and your connection to the spiritual. Okay? That's what poetry does. Poetry is a gateway into your soul. And reanimate, okay, in those who have ever experienced these emotions, the sleeping, the cold, the buried image of the past. All right? So you have all these past lives in you that you don't remember. But a certain word, a certain poem will reanimate all these past lives in you, and they will sum up and says, hey, we remember, okay? And this will elevate you. Poetry makes immortal all that is best and most beautiful in the world. It arrests the vanishing aberrations which haunt the interlunations of life, and veiling them or in language or in form, sends them forth among mankind, bearing sweet news of kindred joy to those with whom the sisters abide, because there is no more portal of expression from the caverns of the spirit which they inhabit into the universe of things. Poetry redeems from decay the visitations of the divinity in man. Okay? There's God in us. And poetry reminds us there is God in us. There's God everywhere. And poetry reminds us there's God everywhere. Poetry lets us see the divine everywhere. Okay? We're not able to see this because of how our minds work, because we're only able to see through time and space. But poetry helps us go beyond time and space and connect immediately to the eternal. Okay? To the divine, to the spiritual. All things exist as they are perceived, okay? So again, the idea of Kant where we can only see things through time and space, okay? These are things we can see, but you know what? There are things that we can feel that we can't see. It's the feelings that matter, at least in relation to the percipient. The mind is its own place and of itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. Okay? But what this tells us is that if we learn how to control our minds, we can control reality itself. Okay? But poetry defeats the curse which binds us to be subjected to the accident of surrounding impressions. Okay? Do you understand this idea? The idea is poetry activates our imagination. Before, we were in a prison of our own making. Before, we could only see what we could see. But the poetry gives us a higher sight. It allows us to see the things beyond just time and space. The eternal, the past, the future. And wherever it spreads its own figure curtain or withdraws life's dark veil from before the scene of things, it equally equates for us a being within our being, okay? All right? So each time we use our imagination, we create our new reality for ourselves. It makes us the inhabitants of a world to which the familiar world is a chaos. It reproduces a common universe of which we are portions and percipients, and it purchases from our inward insight, the film of familiarity with which obscures from us the wonder of our being. It compels us to feel that which we perceive and to imagine that which we know. It creates a new universe after it has been annihilated in our minds by the recreation of impressions blunted by reiteration. It justifies the bold and true words of Tasso. None but God and the poet deserve the name of creator. The poet is the creator of our world because the poet has the imagination to see things beyond time and space, beyond this reality. And the poet then distills these emotions into words that help us ourselves connect to the divine. Okay? Poetry is a portal to the divine. This is clear, right, guys? All right, so we'll conclude. The most unfailing hero, companion, and follower of the awakening of a great people to work a beneficial change in opinion or institution is poetry. Poetry is the basis of all civilization. Okay? It is from poetry that everything must come from. At such periods, there's an accumulation of the power of communicating and receiving intent and passion, conceptions respecting men and nature. The person in whom this power resides may often, as far as regards many portions of their nature, have little apparent correspondence with that spirit of good of which they are the ministers. But even while they deny and abjure, they are yet compelled to serve that power which is seated on the throne of their own soul. Okay? So poets don't actually know their prophet. Poets don't know they're connected to the monad or the divine. They just do what they do because they have no choice. Okay? There's a fire burning in you. You have to let it out. Otherwise, you can't sleep. You can't eat. Okay? Poets are prophets who must speak the truth. Otherwise, they will just suffocate. Okay? They'll just drown in their own misery. It is impossible to read the compositions of the most celebrated writers of the present day without being startled with the electric life which burns within their words. Okay? Poets are the flame itself. Poets are not human. They are the messengers of the divine flame. Okay? They just burn. And when you read their words, you can see the flame in them. Okay? So even though Homer, we don't even know who this guy is. We don't have his picture. But you can see when we read him, he's alive still. Okay? His words still burn. They measure the circumference and sound the depths of human nature with a comprehensive and all-penetrating spirit, and they are themselves perhaps the most sincerely astonished at its manifestations. Okay? It's all inspiration. When Homer is speaking, he doesn't know what he's speaking. He doesn't. Are you telling me like this guy who's just blah, 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 he's able to understand, oh, this is what Odysseus is doing. Odysseus is trying to create a reality and he's using imagery, he's using diction. No, he doesn't understand anything. He's just blah, 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 okay? Because he's a divine fire. He's just channeling God, okay? He's just a portal for God to speak with the universe, with us. Poets are the hierophants of an unapprehended inspiration, okay? The mirrors of the gigantic shadows which futurity casts upon the present. They are prophets because the future is speaking to us today, okay? Right? God is past, future, present. And so when God speaks, he's also speaking to the future. The words which express what they understand not, the trumpets which sing to battle and feel not what they inspire, the influence which is moved not but moves. Poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the world. Okay? Poets are prophets, and their words create our reality. Everything that we know, everything that we do, it's because of language, of the language that the poets create. Okay? Does that make sense, guys? And that's how Homer created civilization, because God willed it that Homer speak truth, and willed that this truth will spread across the world through his poetry. Okay, it's all by design. Does it make sense? All right, any questions? Okay, all right, so I'll see you guys next class, okay? We conclude the Iliad today, all right? So remember that the Iliad, it's a war of wills. So the epic starts with the battle between Agamemnon and Achilles. And they're trying to impose their will on each other. And it leads to disaster for the Greeks because Hector and the Trojans are now about to destroy them. And the Greeks, led by Odysseus, come to Achilles' ship and beg him to return to the battlefield. But Achilles wants Agamemnon to come and apologize and kneel before him, which Agamemnon is not going to do. So Achilles says no. But this leads to a conundrum because Agamemnon is going to apologize, the Trojans are going to come destroy the Greeks. Achilles needs Agamemnon to apologize in order to save face. All right, so the Greeks and Achilles are all very anxious. So what Achilles does is he sends Patroclus to get the Greeks to come and beg some more, right? But Nestor understands what Achilles is doing. He refuses to apologize, but he tells Patroclus, listen, we can't get Achilles to fight, but maybe you can fight for us. And maybe that will save the day. Now, Patroclus is very excited, okay, because he's waited all his life to outshine Achilles, because all his life he's been in Achilles' shadow, right? But now his problem is, how does he convince his superior, his commander, Achilles, to go with the plan? Okay? So this leads to a conflict, a battle of wills between Patroclus and Achilles. And remember, we read the speech last week, and I want us to visualize how the battle is being fought, okay? So this is Patroclus, and this is Achilles. And if you read the speech, we will discover that this battle is being fought at 3 levels, okay? There is the conscious, emotional level, okay? Then there is the calculating, manipulative, and then there is the strategic, okay, planning level. All right, so imagine 3 different individuals together in Patroclus. The first person is the actor, okay? The person who appears before Patroclus and cries like a girl, right? Then there's the calculating, which is like, why am I doing this? I'm doing this because I want Achilles to agree to me to join the battlefield against the Trojans, okay? And the strategic, okay, the old wise man sitting in the back is like, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to convince Achilles to agree, then I'm going to join the battlefield and I'm going to win honor, okay? Does it make sense, okay? The first person just appears before Achilles and does the acting. Second person is the one trying to explain the direction, okay? The third person is the long-term director, okay? So think of this as the actor, director, and producer, okay? Or the investor. What is my long-term gain from this? Now, Achilles is the same, right? Because Patroclus cannot understand Achilles' mentality, okay? So the actor in Achilles is like, why are you crying, Patroclus? This is not our war. The director in Achilles is, maybe I can trick Patroclus in helping me enter the battlefield, right? And the producer is like, I want to win glory for myself, okay? And it's all very subtle. But if you read their dialogue, if you read the debate, you'll recognize that this is all happening at once. But not only that, but if you examine your own life and the decisions you make, you'll recognize that you're doing all 3 at once, okay? Subconsciously, all right? So, Sigmund Freud would say that this is the id, okay? The id is just the basic desire, right? You want glory, you want sex, you want money, okay? This is the superego, okay? And this is the ego, okay? Or maybe you can think of this as the conscious, subconscious. All right? So we've known for a long time that we as humans operate at many different levels all at once. And so we don't really know why we do what we do, okay? And so they are having this fight, and it's all at a very subconscious level. And what Achilles does is he says something to Patroclus, which, as I said before, it's very weird what he says to Patroclus. Ultimately, he agrees to Patroclus is going, and that's all he has to do, okay? Then nothing would happen. Patroclus just goes, he faces Hector, he realizes Hector is stronger than he is, and he retreats, right? That's what should have happened, and that's what Nestor and the Greeks expect to happen. right? And then Patroclus comes, and Achilles recognizes that he needs to join the battlefield because Hector is too strong. Okay? That's what's being planned. But what Achilles does is he adds an element to it which changes the dynamic of events, okay? Which changes how things unfold, okay? So, Ivory, can you read this?
Okay. Once you have whipped the enemy from the fleet, you must come back, Patroclus. Even if Zeus, the thundering lord of Hera, lets you seize your glory, you must not burn for war against these Trojans.
Okay, stop, okay? This is what's happening. Achilles is implanting into Patroclus some new ideas. And these new ideas is, oh my God, Patroclus, once you enter the battlefield, Zeus, okay? Zeus is going to give you glory. All right? He's getting Patroclus excited. Patroclus is hoping to win some glory on the battlefield, to prove his worth, to prove at least he's equal to Achilles. But Achilles is saying, oh my God, Patroclus, it's possible you could be better than me. It's possible that Zeus himself anoints you the greatest warrior in the world. It's possible, Patroclus, that you win all the glory for yourself. Okay? Keep on reading.
Madmen lusting for battle, not without me. You will only make my glory.
So do not outshine me, Patroclus. I know all your life you've wanted to be better than me, or at least prove you're my equal, but don't do that, man. Okay? I'm warning you. Do not prove you're better than me. Keep on going.
You will only make my glory that much less.
Okay?
You must not lost in the flesh and fire of triumph, slaughtering Trojans outright. Drive your troops to Troy.
So imagine this, Patroclus. Once you enter the battlefield, everyone's gonna love you. You're gonna kill Trojans one by one. But don't do that, because he will make me look bad. Okay?
What if one of the gods who never die comes down from Olympus heights to intervene in battle? The deadly archer loves his Trojans dearly. No, you must turn back, soon as you bring the light of victory to the ships. Let the rest of them cut themselves to pieces on the plain. Oh, would to God, Father Zeus, Athena, and Lord Apollo, not one of all these Trojans could flee his death, not one, no Argive either, but we could stride from the slaughter so we could bring Troy's hallowed crown of towers toppling down around us, you and I alone.
Okay, so this little speech, okay, it's almost impossible to see to the naked eye, but it dooms Patroclus, okay? Because what it does, it tells Patroclus, you have the opportunity to seek eternal glory. You have the opportunity to be better than me. In fact, you're probably better than me, okay? And that gives Patroclus hubris, right? And hubris is what's going to get him killed, because he will challenge Hector, okay? Okay? Nowhere does Achilles in this speech say, be aware of Hector, okay? All he says is, hey, Zeus is going to support you, and you'll be better than me, okay? Now, if Achilles is stronger than Hector, Patroclus can be stronger than Hector. All right? And why does Achilles do this? Achilles understands that Patroclus, if he's young, he's impetuous, he's jealous. If he gives the opportunity, he will seek glory for himself. And therefore, he might get himself killed. And you know what? If he kills himself or he gets himself killed, good for me, Achilles, right? Because now I have the perfect excuse to join the battlefield and win all the glory for myself, okay? You understand? And this is impossible to see. No one, the Greeks don't see this. The gods can't see this. But Patroclus himself can't see this. And Achilles himself doesn't know he's doing this. You understand? Okay? So the question for us then is, how does this happen? How are we able to function at 3 different levels and do things that are invisible to ourselves and to others? All right? How is it that we make decisions? How is it that we manipulate other people as well as ourselves? Okay, does that make sense? That's a question before us today. All right. So let's look at the standard understanding of psychology, okay? So remember, what happens is this. We have experiences, and then we turn this experience into memories. And memories are really emotions, okay? And then these emotions are organized in a way that creates an identity. All right? And different memories can create different identities. And together, we create the worldview, which is basically our personality, or how we perceive the world. And our personality determines our preferences, what we like, how we make decisions, and how we perceive the future, okay? All right, so this is a standard model of psychology, which you should have learned in psychology class, right? All right, there's some issues with this. The first issue is, how do you filter experiences? We can have all the same experiences, but the way we perceive these experiences are different, which leads to different memories, okay? So what is the mechanism that allows for filtering, okay? Second problem is that we know that memories are malleable and flexible. They're always changing, okay? That's weird, all right? So it's possible over the course of your lifetime, you go back to the same event, but each time you perceive it differently, which causes different emotional reaction in you, all right? So why is that the case? So for example, maybe, when you were young, your dad hit you by accident, okay? And at first you were really hurt and you perceived it as your dad doesn't love you. But maybe then when you get older and you have your own child, you hit your child accidentally and then you feel sympathy for your father, okay? Do you understand? So the memory changes according to your own development. So when does that happen? Okay? And the third thing is the idea of imagination. So we know from memories, you can expand them outwards and create new worlds and universes. That's how we create novels. That's how you write essays, okay? But how do you do that, right? Because your material is limited, but the imagination is unlimited, right? So there are clearly some issues with this standard model of consciousness, all right? Now, this semester, we've learned a new model of consciousness. So let's take that model and apply it to the Iliad and explain why they behave the way they do, all right? Okay, so the model that we use is from Kant. And Kant says that rather being a passive observer of the world, meaning that we just absorb experiences and turn them into memories, we are active participants in reality, meaning that we create reality, okay? And so through space and time, okay, which can be influenced by language and media, okay? We turn nomana, the things into themselves, okay? But the things in themselves are just vibrations, energy, okay? Into the phenomena, things to us. Okay? Now, there are certain problems with this model. The first problem, of course, is where does our space and time come from? Okay, we know that we create space and time in our brains, but why do our brains do that? And what is the mechanism in our brain that does that, okay? Number two is, what is the nomana, right? Kant says we can't see it, but what is it? And the third thing, of course, is if this is all subjective, meaning that we all create our own reality, how do we know we're creating the same reality, okay? And so to solve this problem, Hegel proposes this, okay? The nomana is the Geist, a spirit. And the Geist is what gives us space and time, all right? So as we are interacting with the nomana itself responds to us, okay? Does that make sense? And that's how we can all see the same thing, because it's the same force that we're acting on. Okay, so this is a bit confusing, so let's look at what the Greeks say, okay? So, the the Greeks have a metaphor for this, okay? The metaphor is this. Imagine infinite number of people, okay? And the consciousness extends infinitely. Okay, so different dimensions, different waves. All right, so on one level, you are just talking to yourself. But another level, you're talking to another person. Another level, you're talking to more people, okay? And this goes on and on infinitely. All right? Now, remember that as you engage the geist talks back to you. Okay? What this means is that think of the internet where whatever you produce is stored online, but you also have some memory on your own hardware. Okay? All right. So this creates memories. Okay? So your memories is now part of the geist. And as a result, the geist is constantly evolving as you evolve as well. All right, so it's like the internet. It's dynamic. It's not set. As you engage the internet changes. Okay? And so what happens is that these memories are stored in the geist. Some are permanent because these memories are extremely visual or very powerful. Okay? And that gives rise to new consciousness, like gods. Okay? And there are higher gods. All right? So these are maybe new gods. But then you have the old gods. All right? And so the higher you go, there are different consciousness or different spirits. So the new gods are gods like Zeus, Apollo, Aphrodite. They actually interfere in human events. Okay? The old gods are older gods that have been there since the beginning of time. And there are things like honor, justice, fate, destiny. Okay? And they're stronger than the new gods. Okay? But then you go up higher and you have God itself. All right? And how can we understand God? We understand God as the immutable and unwritten laws of the universe. Okay? We don't know what they are, but they're like gravity. They're going to be there to structure the universe. And so think of them as like good and truth, okay, and beauty. All right? So there are different levels to this. Why? Because as we engage the universe evolves. And we implant our memories into the universe. So even though we die, our memories are still there. And they're still living. We can access them at any time. Okay? So what is interesting about this is that the infinity of the universe is also captured in us. Okay? We are a hologram of the universe, right? So the internet is this vast, right? But on our computers, we have a hologram, a replica of the entire internet, all right? Because we connect to it all the time. We engage in it all the time. So in other words, whatever we do here, okay, impacts the entire universe. Whatever we do here will have reparations throughout the entire universe, throughout all of humanity. One good act by yourself can impact the entire universe itself. Because the universe is conscious. Okay? Now we understand why Patroclus and Achilles are able to do what they do. Because if this is the universe, if this is our consciousness, then there are different spirits working within us. You understand? And so we are constantly able to, let me do this, to operate in different dimensions. Okay? We're able to see far ahead. We're able to focus on right now. We're able to be strategic and occupy different people. Okay? We are literally a universe unto ourselves. Does that make sense? Okay? All right, so you're like, okay, I don't think this makes sense. Well, if you read the Iliad, okay, Homer actually reveals to you how this works. Okay, that's what poetry is. Poetry is a snapshot of this universe in motion. All right? So what we're going to do is we're going to read together the Shield of Achilles. All right? So remember, Patroclus is dead, but Patroclus took Achilles' armor to the battlefield. So Achilles has no armor. So he talks to his mother, Thetis, and Thetis goes talk to Hephaestus, the great armorer of the gods, up in Mount Olympus. And Hephaestus is going to design a shield for Achilles that will make him invincible. And the shield has living images. It's like a movie, okay? It's not a picture, it's a movie where the images are constantly appearing over and over. All right, so this is only a part of the shield, okay? Can you read this?
And he forged a fallow field, broad rich plowland tilled forward the third time, and across it crews of plowmen wheeled their teams, driving them up and back and soon as they'd reach the end strip.
Okay, so really important, guys, okay? He's using a lot of verbs, right? Which says that this thing is in motion, right? You can see how they're moving. Till for the third time, okay? So you can imagine the first and second time. Crews of plowmen wheel their teams, driving them, okay? Moving, okay? Okay? Do you understand? It's all motion. It's all living. These are what our memories are. Our memories are constantly images in motion, changing, reacting, okay? Imagining, okay? Keep on going.
A man would run up quickly and hand them a cup of honeyed, mellow wine as the crews would turn back down along the furrows, pressing again to reach the end of the deep fallow field, and the earth turned black behind them, like earth churning. I can't really read. Churning. Solid gold as it was, that was the wonder of Hephaestus' work.
Okay, keep on going.
And he forged a king's estate where harvesters labored, reaping the ripe grain, sowing their whetted scythes. Some stalks fell in line with the reapers, row on row, and others to sheaf binders skirted round with ropes. 3 binders standing over the sheaves. Behind them, boys gathering up the cut swaths, filling their arms, supplying grain to the binders, endless bundles. And there in the midst the king, scepter in hand at the head of the reaping rows, stood tall in silence, rejoicing in his heart. And off to the side, beneath a spreading oak, the heralds were setting out the harvest feast. They were dressing a great ox they had slaughtered, while attendant women poured out barley, generous, glistening handfuls strewn for the reapers' midday meal. Okay,
so we said that this shield of Achilles is actually the soul of Achilles, okay? What his consciousness is. What is inside him. And what this is ultimately is a universe unto itself, right? You have lots of different characters, right? The king, the woman, okay? Just lots and lots of people, okay? It's a universe unto itself. And we know the soul is composed of memories. What this is telling us is that these memories don't come from our experiences. These memories comes from part of our experiences, but also comes from the universe itself, okay? These experiences, these memories only allow us to access the universe in dialogue with it. And as a result, we're able to absorb memories from elsewhere. Another way to understand this is that we are constantly living and dying, okay? When we die, all we're doing is really shedding our own bodies and assuming new bodies. But our memories stay with us. Our experiences stay with us. The poetry in us stays with us and is constantly being rewritten. Okay? And that's where our power comes from. Our power, our will to live, our will to fight comes from the fact that we are conscious beings constantly in dialogue with the universe. That is both infinite and eternal. Okay? And this is what this poetry represents. All right? Does it make sense to you guys? All right, so this is only a snapshot, but he goes on and on, which tells us that we are extremely complex, sensitive, and multifaceted beings. We are the universe ourselves, okay? Our consciousness is the universe. The universe is our consciousness. It's all interconnected, all right? Does that make sense to you guys? Okay, all right. So this is an idea we'll come back to later when we read the other great books, okay? All right, but something that I want to discuss is this. All right, so Achilles jumps into the battlefield and he kills Hector, all right? And at this point, Achilles should be happy because he's killed the great Hector, which proves that Achilles is the greatest warrior in the world. He's now secured eternal fame. But then he does something really weird. He decides to mutilate Hector's body. He ties Hector's body to his chariot and goes around the city of Troy. And that causes Priam and Hecuba, the parents of Hector, to go insane. Okay? They're screaming at this devil. And the Greeks, okay, Odysseus, Agamemnon, are disgusted. Because for them, Hector is a great warrior. You respect a great warrior. You do not mutilate a great warrior like that, okay? Hector fought well on the battlefield. He never cheated. Okay? He was just fierce and he was great. So he was respected among everyone, okay? Also, when Achilles jumped back in the battlefield, Hector didn't run away. Hector stood his ground and died, right? Everyone else ran back in the city of Troy, but Hector is like, no, I must take responsibility for this defeat. So he stands outside the gates of Troy. Everyone's shouting for Hector, come back, you idiot. Achilles is going to kill you. And Hector's like, no, I must face the consequences for my action, which is the greatest act of bravery in the Iliad, right? Because he knows he's going to die. So everyone's looking at this and saying, this is really terrible, okay? So what's happened is Achilles has gone insane. That's the only explanation for it. And the Greeks tried to comfort Achilles by holding this funeral games for Patroclus, right? But that doesn't really solve the problem. And now Achilles is he's depressed, basically. He can't sleep, he can't eat, he can't even cry for his friend. He's so overburdened by guilt, okay? So that is the issue where you are connected with the universe, okay? The universe is conscious, you are the universe itself. So when you do evil, okay? And he in his heart knows he's the one who got Patroclus killed. He manipulated Patroclus into his death. Then you know, because the universe knows. And this haunts you for the rest of your life. Okay? You cannot escape it. So when you do evil, God doesn't have to punish you because you punish yourself with the memory of it, okay? Your soul burns with regret and despair and guilt and shame. Okay? Does that make sense? All right? So now you have this other conflict emerging in the Iliad, which is, okay, Achilles is about to go insane. He can't sleep, but he doesn't know what he did wrong. He cannot admit that what he did because he doesn't understand himself, okay? So what happens now is interesting because if you read the Iliad, the gods decide that they have this great meeting, okay? And decide that, you know what, we're going to broker a peace between Priam and Achilles. Hermes comes and takes Priam into the Greek camp. And then Priam and Achilles meet, okay? And this is the ending of the Iliad. But then the question then is, how does that happen? Okay? Is this being metaphorical or is it being literal? My argument to you is that it is literal, okay? So let's explain how this works. All right, so this is Achilles. This is Priam. Okay? They hate each other. They could not be further apart, okay? But then you have everyone else. If you go back to this model, okay? At some point, okay, Achilles and Priam, their thoughts will converge together. Okay? But this is the universe, so there are other consciousness within this universe. And they see the conflict in here, and they will now engage in a dialogue to resolve the differences between Prime and Achilles, okay? And these are called the gods, right? Okay, does it make sense? The universe is full of these different memories that are constantly living, and therefore they can engage in debate, dialogue, and imagination, okay? And so what they say is, hey, Priam and Achilles, you need to come to an agreement. And then subconsciously, Achilles knows, okay, you know what? Priam's gonna come and talk to me, and Priam's like, I need to go and see Achilles, okay? And now what happens is, the universe has come to an agreement. And so therefore, the universe now will create a reality around this agreement. Okay, does that make sense? So what this means is, Priam can now walk directly from Troy to the Greek camp, and what the Greeks will do is walk away and pretend they didn't see Priam. Does that make sense, guys? Because the universe has instructed them, Priam and Achilles must meet, therefore you must make it possible for them to meet. So then, the guard is sitting around, Priam's walking this way, and he's like, I should turn that way. And then Priam walks past him. Does it make sense, guys? Okay? Because we are, again, in constant dialogue with the universe. The universe has a plan, then we must obey this plan. Okay? And in China, we call this what? The mandate of heaven. Right? The mandate of heaven. It's the will of the gods that Priam and Achilles must meet and reconcile the differences so that the universe can continue on, okay? Otherwise, the universe must stop at this point. Because Achilles is not going to give up Hector's body. Priam will only suffer because of this, okay? Do you understand? And this is how the universe works. It's unbelievable if you think about it, okay? But if you think about it really hard, it makes a lot of sense. Why do events happen the way they do? Well, in China we say, mandate of heaven, because it is God's will. Right? Okay? How do we explain in China, Mao Zedong, who's this peasant, he was able to win this war and establish the People's Republic of China. Not only that, but during this war, he never got injured once. How do we explain that? Okay? There are all these things that happen in history, and these people come out of nowhere and like, wait a minute, where did this guy come from? How is he able to do what he does? The mandate of heaven, guys, okay? There is a consciousness universe. There's a plan, there's an intention, a design to it. And we all participate in its design, okay? Right? The conflict now is, there's a great injustice in the world where Achilles refuses to return Hector's body to Priam. And so everyone agrees, both the Greeks and Trojans agree, we are going to pretend that we don't see them meeting, okay? Does that make sense? Do you guys understand what's happening? All right, okay. So now we come to what is recognized as the greatest ending in all of literature, okay? This is the final battle between Priam and Achilles. This is the greatest battle in human history, all right? These are two people who hate each other. Priam saw Achilles murder Hector, his beloved son. But not only that, but Priam also witnessed Achilles kill many, many of his sons, okay? And for Achilles, Priam is the great enemy. The person who stole Helen from the Greeks, the person who started this war. So now they're going to meet. And this is the greatest battle in the Iliad, okay? So, Ivy, can you read, please?
The majestic king of Troy slipped past the rest and kneeling down beside Achilles, clasped his knees and kissed his hands. Those terrible man-killing hands that had slaughtered Priam's many sons in battle.
Okay, so the contrast, right? Achilles slaughtered many of Priam's sons in battle, okay? And what the majestic king of Troy does is he kneels, kisses his hands, okay? He kneels before Achilles. Priam is now behind Achilles. Priam could just take a dagger and stab Achilles in the neck and kill Achilles. He doesn't do that. Instead, he kneels before Achilles and kisses the hand, the very hand who killed all of his sons. All right? Keep on going.
Awesome as when the grip of madness seizes one who murders a man in his own fatherland and flees abroad to foreign shores, to a wealthy, noble host, and a sense of marvel runs through all who see him. So Achilles marveled, beholding majestic Priam. His men marveled too, trading startled glances. But Priam prayed his heart out to Achilles.
And what's the effect? Awesome. Okay? Okay. Achilles, the great warrior who bows to no one, he is stunned by this. He is defeated by this. He is awed by the majesty of Priam. Okay? Greatness does not come from defeating your enemies. It comes from forgiving your enemies. Right? This is an act, okay? This one act of kissing the hands of the man who killed all his sons. It's going to change the universe forever, okay? One action is going to change the entire universe and bring peace and reconciliation to the world. All right? And not only is Achilles stunned, but so are everyone around him, okay? His men marvel too, okay? So this is reverberating across the universe, where you're far away, but like you feel as though an earthquake has happened. You feel as though something magical has happened, and it changes you for the better, okay? So remember, what has happened? When the grip of madness seizes one who murders a man in his own fatherland and flees abroad to foreign shores to a wealthy noble host, and a sense of marvel runs through all who see him. Okay? So there are people who do great murder, okay? And so they have to run away. Now when they run away, their crime follows them. They become slaves in a new land. But some people are able to become successful in that place, okay? They're able to change their fate. So what this is saying is, because Priam has the strength and the courage to forgive his great enemy, he's changing his fate. He's changing the fate of the world around him, okay? And the idea here is, as above, so below. Right? And this is a great secret of the universe. What we do today, what we do at this moment, can change the course of history. Because if what we do is memorable, it will implant itself throughout the universe and be there for all future generations. All right? And that's what's happening, okay? So what Homer is doing is, he is drawing from the universe this memory and showing it to us. That's what the Iliad is, okay? Iliad is a depiction of the universe in motion, a universe of consciousness. All right? Keep on reading, Ivory.
Remember your own father, great godlike Achilles, as old as I am, past the threshold of deadly old age. No doubt the countrymen round him plague him now, with no one there to defend him, beat away disaster. No one, but at least he hears you're still alive, and his old heart rejoices, hopes rising, day by day, to see his beloved son come sailing home from Troy. But I, dear God, my life, so cursed by fate, I fathered hero sons in the wide realm of Troy, and now not a single one is left, I tell you. 50 sons I had when the sons of Achaea came, 19 born to me from a single mother's womb, and the rest by other women in the palace. Many, most of them violent errors cut the knees from under, but one was left me to guard my walls, my people, the one you killed the other day, defending his fatherland, my Hector. It's all for him I've come to the ships now, to win him back from you. I bring a priceless ransom. Revere the gods, Achilles. Pity me in my own right. Remember your own father. I deserve more pity. Okay, so Priam is the greatest king in the world. Why? Because he's willing to humble himself before Achilles, right? Remember Agamemnon. This struggle started because Agamemnon refuses to be humble. He refuses to admit that Achilles is right. He refuses to apologize to Achilles. Okay? But Priam is the opposite of Agamemnon. Okay? He's begging
for Achilles' forgiveness, even though he hates Achilles. And why does he do this? What gives him the power to ask for forgiveness, to beg Achilles? The answer is his love for Hector, right? He's doing this because he wants Hector's body back, right? So what animates, what unifies this cosmic universe is love. Love is God, guys. To really access this universe, to really know this universe, you must love, okay? Love makes you invincible. And so Priam has the courage to come to Achilles, but he also has the courage to beg Achilles, to forgive Achilles. All right? And what Priam says is, remember your father, Achilles, right? Okay? As I love Hector, you also love your father. And how does he know that? Because we're all connected by the universe, okay? He's able to imagine the soul of Achilles. And he knows that how Achilles loves his father, okay? As much as he loves Hector. So this is what allows them to come together. All right? The love of Hector makes Priam imagine the love of Achilles for his father. All right? And these are the two forces. Love activates the imagination. Okay, so love is the unifying force of the universe. It brings us all together. The imagination is the animating force of the universe. It makes the universe alive. Okay? And that is our purpose in this world. To love each other and then to activate our imagination to create the reality that we live in. Okay? A world where the pillar is love is perfect and it's just. Okay. All right, keep on reading, Ivory.
I have endured what no one on earth has ever done before. I put to lips the hands of the man who killed my son.
Okay, so what he's saying is that this is a unique moment in history. No one has done this before, especially a king. A king submits himself before the murderer of his beloved son. All right? And because it is unique, because it is a perfect distillation of a father's love for his son, this will be remembered forever, okay? This will become now part of the universe. And how? Because Homer is able to access it, okay? This might have happened somewhere, he doesn't know where, and this might have happened between two people. He doesn't know who, okay? But he knows this happened. He's able to draw on this to create the Iliad. Do you understand? The universe are the living memories of great deeds. And Homer is able to create this by accessing this because they're all within us if we allow it to be in us. Okay, keep on going.
Those words stirred within Achilles a deep desire to grieve for his own father.
Okay, so you see how this works. When you imagine things, you see the truth for what it is. Okay, keep on going.
Taking the old man's hand, he gently moved him back, and overpowered by memory, both men gave way to grief. Priam wept freely for man killing Hector, throbbing, crouching before Achilles' feet as Achilles wept himself, now for his father, now for Patroclus once again, and their sobbing rose and fell throughout the house. Then, when brilliant Achilles had his fill of tears, and the longing for it has left his mind and body. So what's happened is that Priam has defeated Achilles. Okay? Remember, Achilles, his great problem is he can't cry. He doesn't know what he did wrong. He doesn't know how to express his guilt and shame, okay? But now that Priam has forgiven him, Priam has actually liberated Achilles. Okay? Before Achilles, his soul was trapped in evil. And now, by forgiving Achilles, Priam has let his soul loose to reconnect with the universe and therefore to return to its poetic self. Okay? Keep on going. Then he rose from his seat, raised the old man by the hand, and filled with pity now for his gray head and gray beard. He spoke out winging words, flying straight to the heart. Poor man, how much you've borne. Pain to break the spirit. What daring brought you down to the ships, all alone, to face the glance of the man who killed your sons, so many fine, brave boys? You have a heart of iron. Come, please sit down on this chair here.
Okay, and so now this is a resolution, okay? This is the epiphany of Achilles. He recognizes his guilt, and now because Priam is able to forgive him, he's able to forgive himself. And so he's become wiser, more gentle, more poetic, more generous. All right? And this is what life is. This is what it means to be human. All right? To do battle with our own heart. Okay, so let me talk about what this all means. Like, who are we? Why are we here? Where are we going? So in the Buddhist and the Hindu tradition, the idea is that we are constantly reincarnating, okay? And this world that we live in, it's one of pain, it's one of suffering, but it's one that gives us insight. It's one that trains us to be wise. It's one that allows us to have the memories to create a more divine universe, okay? And we do that because we incarnate and we assume different roles, right? So maybe in this life, we are the murderer. But in the next life, we are the murdered, okay? Maybe in this life, we're a human. Next life, we are a plant. Then the next life is an animal. But it goes on infinitely until we've achieved wisdom, okay? So in other words, the point of this life is to develop empathy, okay? Because empathy leads to wisdom and enlightenment. Right? But the great thing about a great book is it's a universe unto itself. And therefore, you can actually speed up the process of wisdom and enlightenment because by reading the Iliad, you can assume different lives. You can have different lives all at once. Okay, does that make sense? So what makes the Iliad so powerful is that you're constantly switching perspectives. Once, today you're Agamemnon, then you're Achilles, then you're Hector, okay? And what's amazing is that Homer is a Greek, and he's speaking for the Greeks. But it ends from the perspective of the Trojans, okay? It ends with Priam getting back Hector's body, taking it back to Troy, and everyone in Troy coming to see the body and crying, okay? Especially the wife of Hector, Andromache, okay? So this is the ending, okay? Can you read? He is Priam, okay?
So he called, and the crowds fell back on either side, making way for the wagon.
Okay, so everyone's coming and crying over Hector's body, but he tells them to move away, okay? Because they need to bury the body properly. So people depart like the sea, and Priam is able to move the body forward. Keep on going.
Once they had borne him into the famous halls, they laid his body down on his large carved bed and set beside him singers to lead off the laments, and their voices rose in grief. They lifted the dirge high as the women wailed in answer. And white-armed Andromache led their songs of sorrow, cradling the head of Hector, man-killing Hector gently in her arms. Oh, my husband, cut off from life so young, you leave me a widow lost in the royal halls, and the boy only a baby, the son we bore together, you and I so doomed. I cannot think that he will ever come to manhood. Long before that, the city will be sacked, plundered top to bottom, because you are dead, her great guardian, you who always defended Troy, who kept her loyal wives and helpless children safe, all who will soon be carried off in the hollow ships, and I with them.
Okay, so this is how it ends. It ends with a prophecy, okay? And this prophecy will turn out to be accurate, where the son of Hector will die. because that's the way of war, okay? When a city is conquered, all the men and all the children are killed, and all the women are enslaved. Okay, so this is Andromachy saying, I'm going to be enslaved, and this is the coming of the Trojan horse, right? So the great hero of the Trojans, Hector, is now dead. So the Greeks are going to come and destroy all of Troy. So you're a Greek, okay? And all your life, you've heard about the great victory of the Greeks against the Trojans, okay? The Trojan War is the most famous story in your life. Now suddenly this guy, Homer, he tells you about, he asks you to imagine what it's like to be a Trojan woman, knowing that in a few months, your entire city will be sacked, your husband will be killed, your children will be murdered, and you'll be put on a ship to be enslaved while you watch your city burn, okay? Think about the power of that, okay? Think about what's happening in Gaza, in Palestine today, right? Where the Israelis are bombing the Palestinians. They're killing a lot of children. And they think it's right that we do so because we are defending our land. Now imagine one day they have a dream. They imagine themselves as the Palestinian who's being attacked for no reason, as a child who's lost his mother, as a mother who's lost her child. Think about the emotional impact on that, okay? What this is the Big Bang of civilization. Because when you read this, okay, when you're forced to switch perspectives, it's a violent assault on your own consciousness, your prejudice, your beliefs, your values all being destroyed at once, which allows you to access the entirety of the universe, okay? Does that make sense? Only through trauma, only through pain, only through suffering can you access empathy and wisdom. And that's a great truth of the Iliad. But also, this is why the Iliad has to be a lifelong journey. Because it will take you an entire life to appreciate the nuance, the beauty, the power of the Iliad. It'll take you a lifetime to understand the motivations, the psychology of all the characters, okay? These are all living beings. But if you were to spend your entire life doing so, I guarantee you, you'll come out a much more wise person who now has a universe in your soul. And that will make you invincible and eternal. Okay? But it's your choice. Okay? All right, so that's it for the Iliad. We'll start the Odyssey next, okay, which is a continuation of the Iliad. Any questions? Ask the question, guys. Come on. You guys understand this? Does it make sense to you? I want to ask a question to make sure you understand what's going on. Okay, all right. This was a lot to take in, but this will stay with you for the rest of your life, okay? So over time, this will become much more clear. All right, so we start the Odyssey next class.